What if you gave yourself full permission just once to be exactly as powerful as you actually are? Could you hold that? Could you stay with it without immediately looking for the reason it isn't true, without reaching for the list of reasons you are not quite ready, not quite enough, not quite the version of yourself that deserves to be believed? Could you stand inside your own light without shrinking, without apologizing, without looking sideways to see if someone else approves? Because here is what I think. I think you are not afraid of failing. I think you're afraid of discovering that you were never as weak as you told yourself you were. And that is a different kind of fear entirely. You have been holding back, and some part of you already knows it. The question is, who are you holding back for? For someone who never asked you to be smaller? Or because you have quietly learned that strength sometimes has to stand alone? And standing alone felt like too much to ask of yourself. So you stayed quiet. You waited. You let the moment pass and told yourself there would be another one. There always feels like another one until suddenly there isn't. And you are standing in a room or a meeting or a conversation, and something in you rises. Something wants to speak. And then nothing. The voice freezes. Not because you have nothing to say, but because the weight of being watched, of being evaluated, of being measured in real time, it lands on your chest before the words can leave your throat. That moment, that exact moment is what I want to sit with you inside of. Not to fix it, not to rush past it, just to look at it honestly. Because the problem was never the language, it was never the words. The problem is that feeling, that electric, almost suffocating feeling of being seen before you are ready, of being heard before you have decided whether you are worth hearing. And that is something that goes deeper than any lesson ever taught. It lives in the body. It lives in the pause before you raise your hand, in the half sentence you swallow at the dinner table, in the email you draft 4 times and delete without sending, in the answer you absolutely knew, but gave to someone else's voice instead. That is where the real conversation is. That is where we need to go. Think about water for a moment. Not a dramatic crashing wave, just ordinary water, moving across rock, through grass, over ground that has never asked its permission. Water does not pause before a stone and think, "Do I deserve to pass this?" It does not apologize for the sound it makes. It does not wait for validation before continuing. It simply moves because moving is its nature. And somewhere inside you, underneath all the learned hesitation, underneath all the years of measuring yourself before you spoke, there is something with that same nature, something that knows how to move, something that was never meant to stay still. Think about your eyes for a moment. Right now, they are reading these words. They are taking in light, translating it, understanding it, and they did not ask you once whether they were allowed. They did not stop at the edge of each sentence and wonder if they were doing it right. They simply did what they were made to do. Your voice was made the same way, not for performance, not to impress, not to be evaluated, for connection, for truth, for the simple, irreplaceable act of one human reaching toward another. And somewhere along the way, you learned to make it something else. You learned to make it a test, a performance review, a reflection of your worth. And that transformation is where the fear was born. Think about a child learning to walk. Not a metaphor you've heard before. Actually picture it. A small person who has never walked a single step in their life, pulling themselves upright on a chair, taking one unsteady step, falling, and then doing it again. Not because someone told them failure was okay, not because they had read about resilience, but because the desire to move was bigger than the fear of falling. They were not performing. They were not worried about who was watching. They were just trying. And every single person who has ever walked on this earth learned exactly that way. Every single one. Even you. There was a version of you who did not know how to be afraid of trying. She still exists. She is not gone. She is just buried under a long education in what other people think. And I want to tell you about a seed, not as an analogy, as something real. A seed breaks in complete darkness. No applause, no audience, no guarantee of sunlight on the other side. It breaks because something inside it is too alive to stay contained. And the breaking is not failure. The breaking is the beginning. There is invisible courage before there is any visible growth. There is a whole world of becoming that happens where no one can see. And that is where you are right now. Not failing, breaking open. And the darkness around you is not the absence of possibility, it is just where beginnings live. There is a boy who grew up being told his accent was wrong, who was laughed at on the pitch not for how he played, but for where he came from, for how he sounded, for the version of himself that did not match what others expected. Cristiano Ronaldo did not become quieter. He did not decide the mockery meant something true. He stayed. He kept showing up in the space where people doubted him, not because he was fearless, but because what he was moving toward was bigger than the voices trying to turn him back. The mockery never stopped mattering. He just stopped letting it make the decisions. There is a child who was told his body would not allow him to become what he dreamed. Too small, they said, too fragile. The kind of gentle assessment that sounds like concern but functions like a ceiling. Lionel Messi did not become someone else. He did not rebuild himself in the shape of what others expected a champion to look like. He simply refused to let a physical limitation become an identity. The body they doubted became the one that moved in ways no one had ever seen, not despite what they said, through it, through the pressure of it, through the years of carrying the weight of their low expectations and choosing again and again not to become them. And there is a woman who was told before she had ever fully arrived at herself that her voice was too much, too loud, too raw, too honest. Oprah Winfrey sat in rooms where people decided her voice was a problem, and she kept speaking. Not with aggression, not with the brittle energy of someone trying to prove a point, but with the quiet, unshakable certainty of someone who has decided that silence is not a price she is willing to pay. She did not wait until no one doubted her. She did not wait until the room agreed she deserved to be heard. She did not wait for a day when it felt safe, because that day was never promised to anyone, not to her, not to you, not to any woman who has ever stood at the edge of her own voice and wondered if crossing it was allowed. She spoke from inside the doubt, from inside the discomfort of being underestimated, from inside the particular loneliness of knowing your own worth in a room full of people who have decided otherwise. And the voice that came out, over time, over years, became one that moved millions, not because it was perfect, because it was present. And there is a girl who had every reason to go quiet, who lived in a world that was, in the most literal sense, trying to silence her. Malala Yousafzai did not speak because she had no fear. She spoke because her purpose was bigger than her fear, because she understood something that most of us spend our whole lives trying to understand, that silence has a cost too, that not speaking is also a choice, and that sometimes the bravest thing is not the loudest thing. Sometimes it is just the thing that refuses to disappear. She refused to disappear, and her voice became something the world had to reckon with. Not because she was extraordinary in the way we use that word to keep distance between ourselves and someone else's courage, but because she was ordinary enough and brave enough and human enough to keep going. That is not a story about a different kind of person. That is a mirror. Now come back to you. Come back to that moment, the frozen moment, the moment where the voice stops before it starts. I want you to understand something about that moment. The fear is not really about speaking wrong. It never was. It was never about the accent or the pause or the sentence that came out sideways. Those were symptoms. The actual wound was always deeper. The fear is about being seen, the full, unfiltered, unpolished, uncertain version of you, being seen in real time without the protection of editing or preparation. That is terrifying, not because you are weak, but because being seen is one of the most vulnerable things a human being can do. And you have learned, probably over many years, probably in ways so slow you did not notice, that being seen sometimes costs something, that speaking sometimes costs something, that the silence after a mistake can be louder than any mistake itself. And so the body learned to protect you. The voice learned to wait. The instinct became, if I do not speak, I cannot be wrong. I cannot be judged. I cannot be the one who tried and fell. But here is what that protection has also cost you. Every time you stayed quiet, there was a version of the moment you did not get to have, a connection that did not happen, an idea that never landed in the world, a thought that dissolved before it ever became real. Silence protects, but it also withholds. And what it withholds is not just your words, it is your presence, your actual living presence in the moments of your life. I want to ask you something gently. How long have you been a guest in your own life? Present in the body, absent from the moment. Sitting in rooms where you belong and feeling like you snuck in through a side door. Watching from just behind your own eyes as time moves and you hold yourself back from fully entering it. Waiting for the moment when you finally feel qualified enough, certain enough, brave enough, not realizing that the moment never arrives on its own. It has to be claimed, quietly, imperfectly, without waiting for the fear to leave first. Because the fear is not a sign that you are in the wrong place. The fear is a sign that what you are about to do actually matters to you. And things that matter deserve to be done even when they are frightening, especially when they are frightening. Because speaking, real speaking, honest speaking, is one of the ways we enter life fully. It is one of the ways we say, I am here, I exist, I have something that is worth the air it takes to say it. And you do. You have always had something worth saying. The question was never about worthiness. It was about permission. And the terrifying truth is that the permission was never going to come from outside. It never does. It has to come from a moment, a very quiet, very private moment, when you decide that your voice is not a problem to be solved. It is not a performance to be perfected. It is just yours. No one gave it to you, and no one can take it back. The people who speak without fear, and I want you to hear this carefully, they are not fearless. They are not a different category of human. They have the same heartbeat before they speak, the same awareness of being watched, the same small voice that says, maybe not now, maybe wait. The difference is not the absence of fear. The difference is a practiced choice to move through it anyway. Not perfectly, not confidently, just forward. And forward starts small. It starts so small that it feels almost meaningless until you look back and see what the small things built. Not a full sentence, not a prepared speech, not a polished, impressive thing. Just one word, said out loud in a real moment to a real person. Then 2 words, then 3. Not because 3 words is the goal, but because 3 words is how you remind your nervous system that speaking does not always end in disaster. that the world does not collapse when you take up space with sound, that the people around you are, more often than not, simply waiting for you to arrive. You do not have to be fluent to be present. You do not have to be perfect to be heard. You just have to begin. And beginning, real beginning, is always smaller than it sounds. It is the one message sent instead of deleted, the one question asked instead of swallowed, the one moment where you let yourself be a little more visible than the day before. That is the whole practice. Not performance, not impression. Just the daily, quiet, almost invisible choice to stop disappearing. Because here is what happens when a voice that has been held still finally begins to move. It does not start as a river. It starts as something tentative, something that is still learning the shape of the path, but it moves, and moving changes it. Every time it moves, it becomes slightly more itself. Every word spoken, even imperfectly, especially imperfectly, is practice not in language, but in existence, in daring to take up the space that was always yours, in learning that your presence here is not accidental, that you are not here to observe other people's lives while managing your own disappearance. You are here to speak, to connect, to contribute the particular thing that only you can offer in the particular way that only you can offer it. No one else has your exact combination of experience and perspective and feeling. No one. And every time you go quiet, that combination stays locked, not just from the world, from you, from the version of yourself that is still waiting to be fully introduced to who she actually is. Because the act of speaking, of putting something interior into exterior form, is also how we come to know ourselves more fully. We do not always know what we think until we hear ourselves say it. We do not always know what we feel until the words bring it into the light. Silence does not just hide you from others, it can hide you from yourself. So when I ask you to speak, I am not asking you to perform for an audience. I am asking you to stop hiding from your own interior world, to let the thoughts out where they can breathe, to trust that what lives inside you is worth the air. There is a kind of water that does not move, still, contained, safe within its edges, no risk, no journey, no possibility of being shaped by what it encounters. A pond, beautiful in its way, reflective, but ultimately holding. And there is water that moves, that does not ask the terrain for permission, that finds the path even when the path has to be made. Water that starts as something small and unnamed and becomes, over time and distance, a river, something that carves landscape, something that brings life to everything it touches, something that cannot be stopped by a single stone because it simply moves around it or through it, or over time, through it. Both are water. The difference is not quality. The difference is not purity or intelligence or talent. It is not about who deserves more or who was given more. The difference is motion. The difference is the daily, almost invisible decision to keep moving, even when the path ahead is not yet visible, even when the ground is unfamiliar, even when no one told you it was safe to go. And I want to ask you, not out loud, not to me, but quietly, in that place inside where the truest answers live, which one do you want to become? Not which one is safer, not which one is easier. Which one do you want to become? Because you already know the answer. You have always known it. You just needed someone to sit with you long enough in the quiet to let you hear yourself say it. And now you have. So let it begin. Not tomorrow, not when you are ready, not when the fear goes away, because the fear does not go away before courage arrives. Courage arrives first. The fear simply learns, over time, that it is no longer the one making the decisions. It begins in this moment, in the next word, the next breath, the next small act of choosing presence over protection. It begins exactly here, and you are more ready than you know.